So the third key that we've found to solve our staffing issues is to create our schedules with built-in redundancies or backups. We know as soon as someone calls off, who's covering for them or what the procedure is. Now, I can't say that we've always had this perfect.
Definitely not for sure.
and it's definitely a lot easier now that, we have 30 to 40 employees as opposed to starting off when it was kind of just Dave. So it's definitely been a process as we've grown through different evolutions of what our laundromat looked like.
And honestly, Carla, that's why we wanted to do this episode. We don't, as she mentioned in the beginning, we don't claim to have all the information. We just want to share with you kind of what we've done, where we started, what we did back in the good old days when we were smaller and had one store, and kind of what we do now. So that's what we're going to do now, is kind of jump into that. So the first thing that I want to, I don't know if reassure you is the right word, give you a little confidence on, is don't worry so much about where we are right now. That's just the goal, right? That's just the target. If you're running a marathon, and clearly I'm not a runner, but if you're running a marathon, you're not going to worry about the last mile of the marathon at the start gate. You're going to worry about the first one. So let us give you a little reassurance there, is it's okay to just start where you are. And part of the reason we're going to actually break down kind of quickly our journey from when we first got in the industry is because we kind of started in almost the worst case scenario. So we're going to run through some of this fairly quickly because we don't want to bore you too much. And then the kind of what we do nowadays, we'll dig into it a little bit more detail. Hopefully that'll help you. So most of you know, in 2010, we bought an unattended laundromat in Amelia, Ohio, suburb of Cincinnati. It was open 24 hours a day. Carla had a career with a 1-hour commute in this direction. I had a career with a 1-hour commute in the opposite direction, believe it or not. And we had 3 babies at home. So it was kind of crazy town at our house. We had, we had no attendance, and I would basically get up. I worked at 7 a.m. I would get up at 5 a.m. and go up to the store and clean up from the night before. Then I would go to work. My way home from work, I would go to the store, clean up again from the day's business. And then a lot of times I would go in again that evening once we put the kids to bed and clean up or pick up again. Now, obviously, I didn't do that forever. That was a means to an end, but we had tons of issues. What that time frame really showed for us is in a fairly short time, I fell in love with the industry and the impact and the opportunity as we, made the store nicer. And we didn't have a ton of money, but we had some. We borrowed some money for new equipment and things like that and kind of grew the business. One of the things we realized is, while that was fine, that was a means to an end, we realized this isn't for us.
It needed to be temporary.
Yes. We're okay with, pretty much doing anything that's legal and ethical temporarily, but this was definitely not a life that we wanted, even if I were able to quit my full-time job. So as we took a look at the industry as a whole, and when we looked at kind of our problems, we were like, you know what? A lot of laundromat owners are owned by their business. We didn't want that to be us long term. We realized that was us in the here and now. And so we wanted to look. And so I kind of went on this journey of how do other people do it? Maybe most people do it this way. Other people have to do it different ways. What does that look like? And then what does it look like for us? How do we get there? And we knew it would be maybe not a 10-year journey, which is what it ended up being. But we knew there would be a journey involved there. We would have to drastically grow the revenue of the business in order to justify and compensate people and build layers of management and things like that. But that was something we were up for.
So let's talk about where we started. So we started with basically him cleaning before and after work. And then that was really just not even the full first year. You were still doing that, but within a few months.
About 5 months.
Within a few months, we were able to get revenues to a place where we were no longer just losing money. We were actually making money. And so we used some of that to reinvest and started hiring people. It started with part-time person who would come in and clean up, and then it became, a full-time person. And, adding cameras so we could see that they were doing their job correctly, having them text and tell us when they got there and when they left, just so that we knew, hey, somebody has shown up to clean the store.
Yeah, and early on, I mean, we had one and then eventually 2 and 3 employees, all very, very part-time, just coming in working a couple hours. And she's exactly right. They would come into work 9 to 11. And I was at work. I was at the phone company climbing telephone poles. And so I would have them text me. And all they would do is text me, I'm here. That's it. That's the only text I would get. If I didn't get that text by 9 a.m., I was pulling up the cameras on my phone, looking to see if they were there. Did they forget to text me? And then I would text them, don't forget to text me. That was literally like it's
very high tech.
You may be laughing, but I mean, that's literally what we did. And you may be laughing because that's what you still do. And that's okay, by the way. But that's how we started out. From there, we got to the point where we said, okay, let's take one of these 3 employees and make them kind of a trainer. So when we do lose people, because we lost them often back then, when we lose people, we bring somebody else in. Dave doesn't have to take a vacation day off at work to train these people, or 2 days off work, or go in the evening and train, which is what I did in the beginning. So we just paid them a little bit more money, made them a trainer. They weren't a manager, weren't a supervisor. Everybody reported to me. Then we went a step further and created an employee handbook. And by the way, back then it was nothing special. We created cleaning checklists and things like that, and even standard operating procedures for how to clean the bathroom and different things, very basic things on pieces of paper that were laminated and stapled together, not complicated stuff. That was the beginning of the journey. And so if that's where you are right now, that's totally okay. That's where we were. We get it. So then we moved forward. So to kind of compartmentalize about a 5-year journey here and not bore you too much with this, from 2011 to 2016, that 5-year window, we went from 1 store to 4 stores. We brought on a full-time manager. Her name's Marlene, and she's now our general manager. We went from attended to partially attended. And then we went from partially attended to what I call more partially attended. And then we went to fully attended. And when we got to fully attended, we added drop-off laundry service to our stores to try to generate more revenue and things like that. And then at the end of that 5-year window in 2016, we added pickup and delivery. Now, for those of you that know our pickup and delivery story, the first couple of years we lost money on pickup and delivery, but we eventually made really good money on pickup and delivery, which actually helped us build out what today looks like our leadership team, which is 2 assistant GMs and a GM. If we had never built those revenue streams and those separate businesses within our facility, we couldn't afford anywhere near the team that we have now, and I would still be more of a backup than I am.
Also, those extra revenue streams really enable you to offer that bonus structure where they can get a higher compensation, but it's directly tied to your revenue. So as your revenue increases, they're getting compensated more, but it's not you having to actually raise the wage.
Yeah, what she's kind of referring to there, without going too deep, is like our attendants get a bonus based on if they do a pound of drop-off laundry, they get 10 cents a pound. But then our store managers get a bonus based on each pound of laundry that goes through their store. So we didn't give them an hourly raise, but as the store grows and we market and grow drop-off laundry, that store manager's compensation has grown drastically over the years because of that.
And it gives them some real ownership of the store. I mean, they truly care about how well their store does.
Yeah, think about an employee at maybe a bad example, but Lowe's or something, when the store is really, really busy on a Saturday in the spring, they're kind of annoyed. They're kind of put off because they're still making $15 an hour or whatever. When our drop-off laundry gets busy and booming and all this stuff, my manager actually gets excited. She's excited to solve the problem, whether it's at one particular store, all the stores, when we add dry cleaning, and then pickup and delivery too. That bonus structure applies to our leadership team. So each of our 2 assistant GMs and our GM get a bonus based on every pound of laundry that the entire company does for wash, dry, fold, and pickup and delivery. And so once again, as we grow the company, we create more stress and more pain points and more systems and more processes. They're motivated and incentivized because they kind of get sort of a profit sharing. If we do double the business of pickup and delivery next year, their bonus will be double of what it is this year. Meanwhile, their hourly wage or their salary doesn't really change at all. And to be honest with you, it really hasn't changed in years because, they don't really ask because they're making more money than they ever have. But if they did ever ask, I would point that out to them. Sorry, you're not going to get a raise in your salary when your bonus has doubled over the last 3 years. But they don't really even ask is the point. So anyway, so now what we want to do is take a look at kind of our staff and break it down for, I know we kind of went like high level, but now we want to kind of take it down and show you kind of what that structure looks like when it comes to scheduling and things like that on kind of a plain Jane level. And once again, maybe you're not at a level where you can copy this, but maybe there's some ideas in here that'll help you to solve problems for yourself. Maybe you're more in the middle of the road of the journey we're describing for you. Today, how we manage, schedule, and staff our business is pretty simple. Our stores are staffed from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. That's roughly 91 hours of payroll. Now, each store has a store manager that in most cases is full-time. There are occasions where they're part-time, but typically full-time. And that's very intentional. Our store manager actually acts as an attendant and a store manager simultaneously. So they're cleaning the store, they're doing customer service, they'll process drop-off laundry, but they do spend about half of their time handling administrative things and staffing things and discipline if needed, and letting me know that something's out of order, or letting know our maintenance guy that something's out of order, or letting know our assistant GM that supplies need to be ordered, handling inventory and managerial duties, if you will. But the beauty of that is if you have 90 hours of payroll in a week and you're a rock star employee, that's your solid foundation for that store, handles 40 of them, you're already way ahead of the curve. So that's one part of how we set up our business. Now, I know some people that operate their businesses and that's their whole payroll. The rest of the time they're unattended. They have a manager and that's it. But what we do is we supplement that with typically about 3 to 4 part-time employees. And depending on their availability and things like that, they'll work anywhere from 1 or 2 shifts a week to maybe 20, 25 hours a week at that store. We also have 4 stores that are all within about 10 miles of each other. And so if an attendant wants more hours or wants to be more part-time, as we call it, then we will cross-train them at our other stores. And that builds up more of the opportunity for backups and redundancies. If a person calls off, the odds are it's probably not a store manager because they're typically not in that situation if they're calling off very often. If it's an attendant and we need to call someone in, the first thing they'll do is start to call in the staff that's off for that store. And then the next thing they'll do is try to call in the staff from the other stores. But because every process and procedure is identical at Queen City Laundry, the handbook is the same, they all work for the same company, they can very easily just go from this store to this store. And all they have to do is work one shift there to be able to be called in. So the people that are ambitious and want more hours and things like that, they're willing to be cross-trained, and we're willing to make that investment in them. Another thing we do when we're setting together the staffing and stuff is we also have the attendance shifts overlap by 30 minutes. And so, say for example, we have an employee work in the morning from 9 to 4. We might have another employee work from 4 to 10 at night, but they don't come in at 4. They come in at 3:30.
So why do you do that? What's the point?
We do that for a couple reasons. The main one we do that is we have a philosophy of it's not if they're going to call off, but when. And so when they call off sick or they are late for work or whatever, there's a couple aspects to it. One of them is we have a 30-day or 30-minute window built in there. And it does a couple things. We've learned that when we back their shifts right up to each other, if the afternoon attendant is 10 minutes late, one, it irritates the morning attendant because they plan on getting off at 3 o'clock and you're not here at 3. If they're scheduled at 3 and you're supposed to be there at 3, but they're or 2:30, what ends up happening is if they're 5 or 10 minutes late, it's the morning shift attendant or sometimes manager's responsibility to actually call that person and find out where are you. Typically when they're 5 minutes late or more is when we'll start calling and say, where are you? If you're just running late, okay, great. We have a 30-minute buffer built in there. If you're not calling in or it's really you just abandon your shift, I mean, if you're calling in after your shift starts, you have a problem to begin with. You should be calling in no more than 15 or 20 minutes before the start of your shift, and that gives us about an hour window.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do when it comes to redundancies and scheduling is we're trying to plan for these things. But part of the reason that we have what we call a cheat built into our payroll system in the morning is we're actually, even though we call ourselves fully attended, we're unattended from 7 to 9 in the morning. A part of the reason we do that is because it's slow and we don't really need someone there. The store is clean. But a part of the reason we do that is we've learned over the years that we can kind of steal or cheat an hour or two of payroll out of the morning every morning. And the idea was we took that and used it to build in redundancies. So our payroll is the same as if we were staffed from 7 or 8 in the morning. Our payroll doesn't change. We're not investing more in that half hour, but we can overlap them by that time. The cool thing, Carla, is when someone does come in for their normal shift at 2:30 and you don't get off till 3, the staff spends a half an hour together.
Yeah.
And they actually love that because they never get to work together. So it's really tough for them to build relationships and get to know each other. Company culture, right? That might be the store manager that's there and they get a half an hour to get to know their new employee or their existing employee or somebody that came from another store that they don't really know that well. That's part of it too, is you're just building in that company culture, but more importantly, you're building in redundancies. Now, assuming that person, let's say, abandoned their job and 10 minutes into the shift, the morning person has figured out they're not coming in. We now have 20 minutes to call someone in and get them there. Most of our employees live pretty close by. Typically, if they can come in, they can usually come in. They can usually get there within a half an hour or so. So it's not a big deal. If they can't get there within a half an hour, they can almost always get there within an hour. And so worst case scenario, we'll either be unattended for that half hour because we can, or we'll ask the morning person if it's okay if they stay.
Yeah.
And they know that that's part of their job. They're not required to. Our philosophy is you don't have to always say yes, but you can't always say no. That's our philosophy. This is a team game here. If you're always saying no, you're going to have a problem, but we don't expect you to always say yes.
So what happens when someone calls in and the manager of that store cannot find anyone to take that shift? And first, just answer that.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
So the primary responsibility when you are a store manager of a store is to cover unstaffed hours. Now, keep in mind, kind of like you don't always have to say yes or can't always say no type thing. With the store managers, we don't expect them to just live their life around the store. They understand that if it's a Sunday at 3:00, leaving is not an option. Now, if it's Wednesday at 6, they understand they can leave. But because of the way our system with the automatic system is, it doesn't lock the store automatically, but it does unlock the store in the morning. So the store manager could hypothetically leave, have dinner with their family, come back at 9:00 and run off any hangers-on that are there that are hiding in the bathroom or whatever, make sure the store is clean and the garbage is cleaned up. They could just leave for 2 or 3 hours, come back, but they're ultimately responsible for making sure that their store is secure. Now, keep in mind, we have store managers at each store, but then we have a leadership team. We didn't always have them, but we do now. So they work as a team. I mean, we have store managers, we have 2 assistant GMs, and a GM. If the GM happens to live 5 minutes from one of our stores, which she does, and she knows that they're just having a rough go of it with staffing, then, we practice grace with each other and we have a team. It's a team effort. And we'll say, hey, tell you what, you stay till 6. I know you've been there since 8 in the morning. You stay till 6:30. I'll be there at 8. I'll clean up and lock up, and you can just enjoy the evening with your family. It's a day-by-day thing, but ultimately, the store manager's primary responsibility is for their store under all circumstances. But that doesn't necessarily mean we expect them to work a 14-hour day. But what it boils down to is, as we've built additional layers of management throughout the years, all we've done is build additional redundancies. So if you have if you have one store, you don't have redundancies to pull from another store. If you have 2 stores, now you can cross-train people. If you have one store manager that runs 2 stores, you have less layers of management there. If you have a store manager at each store, now you can cover for each other.